Hello, my lovely listeners. Welcome back to Gram and Pakou. I hope that you had a wonderful weekend and that you are enjoying this story so far. I'm excited to share this next chapter with you, so I invite you to sit back, relax, and let's see what happens.
I've done my best and my worst, learned my lessons. No matter how hard my life would treat me, I'd always get right back up, never worry. Cause I got a million reasons to keep holding on. Yeah, I got all that it takes to...
Pakou watched as Gram's eyes darkened, and she put a distance between them. Her mind was running with all sorts of different questions, and the answers she was receiving weren't to her liking. She turned back around to find him still watching her. "Why are you doing this?" she asked. "You hardly know me." "I know enough, Pakou. And what I know, I want." Laughing, she replied, "You don't take no for an answer, do you?" "Not if I can help it." He smiled and tapped her hand. "What's keeping you from saying yes?" "Other than the fact that we're complete strangers?" "Geez, let me think. I'm not the kind of woman you bring home to see your mother. I'm not rich. And I'm certainly not a socialite. My mother doesn't care for those things. She grew up on a farm where she milked the cow." Pakou blinked and almost laughed. "What?" He stood up and crossed his arms. "I'm sensing some sort of weird energy here, like you feel you don't belong with me because of what you see right in front of you. Ask me, Pakou, ask me anything." She stood up and straightened. "All right. You're from old money. I'm not. I'm not fit to be your wife, and I don't care to be. So why are you still chasing after me when you can have everyone else?" "I've had everyone else, and now I want you. And who says you're not fit to be my wife? And money doesn't make a difference in how my parents will see you. They weren't born with a silver spoon. They created a legacy with their hands and sweat. I'm like them. I value hard work, and I hate people who think a little money is going to buy you away into things. Like what Eva is doing right now." She frowned, and then she covered her face with her hands. "I'm so embarrassed." He reached out and removed her hands to hold. "Why?" Looking up, she replied, "Because I had assumed you were old money and that you had it easy. I had no idea that your parents worked for their legacy." "Oh, you just never asked. I once had nothing to wear but Goodwill pants that tore the knees. I'm not who you think I am. I want to protect you because I know that together you and me can create magic. Now what say you?" She took a deep breath and let his fingers touch her gently, and then she lifted her eyes to him and stepped forward, finding the courage, and stood on her toes. As her lips gently touched, she felt a small spark of fire ignite from the pit of her belly, and she gasped lightly. He reached out and placed his hand on the small of her back, pushing her toward him, closing the distance until nothing could come between them. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, what?" he asked as he broke free from the kiss and began to nibble her neck. "Yes, I'll marry you." Ka was watching her with annoyance as Pakou dropped the pink dress into the suitcase she had opened on her bed. When she ignored it and picked up another dress, Ka came to her and ripped it away. And then she gathered her hands together and pulled her close to her. "Are you sure you want this?" she asked. "Yes," Pakou whispered. "This time it was my car. What if next time it's me they hurt? You know, I couldn't stop shaking after I witnessed my poor Ford." "He's offering you protection with his name. I mean, I admit that's brownie points with me, but I also am afraid he may still hurt you because he's a man after all. And for crying out loud, you haven't even met his parents yet." I know. He's lucky I have none, so he doesn't have to win anyone over." Hello," Ka said as she pointed to herself. "He has to win me over." "Right. Thank you for being there for me." Ka pulled her in for a hug. "Gosh, when I saw your poor car, my heart just broke. How could Justin let his goddamn wife do that to you?" "I'm not standing up for the man, but I don't think he actually knew she did that." She pulled away and brushed Pakou's hair out of her face. "What do you plan on doing?" "Well, Graham says we should make it a big announcement so they both know what's going on. If we do it this way, he may just show up, and Graham is looking forward to it so that he can beat the shit out of Justin, but I doubt that he will. Kyle laughed as she grabbed the dress from the floor she tossed out earlier to fold into the suitcase. Knowing that bastard, I bet he will show up just to make a last known appearance, and I'm sure his wife will want to tag along to embarrass you as well. Graham is hoping so too. And I admit I am also hoping that, so that I can finally throw it in his face that I am now no longer available for him to seek out. As Pakou came to fold the clothes into the suitcase, Kyle grabbed her arm and pulled her in for a hug. The two remained that way for a bit until Kyle pulled away and touched the strands on Pakou's face, and suddenly her eyes filled with tears and she laughed. Oh, gosh, have you ever known me to cry like this? Kyle asked. Pakou shook her head in shock. What's going on with you? I'm getting married, not being put on death row. And then suddenly Ka's face broke into horror, and she covered her hands with her face. I'm pregnant. Pakou blinked and then pried her friend's hands from her face. What? I'm pregnant, she repeated. I'm about 8 weeks along. It's no wonder I've been so bitchy and my emotions are all over the place. Oh my, Pakou whispered. What are you going to do? Shrugging, Ka whispered, I don't know, honestly, because I can't remember who I was with when this little creature was created. I'd hate to think it was Roger since I was so mean to him, but my inside is telling me that it's 90% him. And the other 10%? It's in the wait until baby is born and do a DNA test with every single guy you had leading up to pregnancy. Pakou let out a breath. Oh boy, Ka. Yeah, oh boy is right. I've been avoiding everything since I saw that pregnancy test a few days ago. I didn't have the courage to tell you, and I'm so sorry for taking away the happy moment of your marriage announcement. I didn't know what to do anymore. Ka, you don't have to hide from me. I can't believe you held all this in without telling me. You're so foolish to think that I wouldn't be here for you. Pakou reached over for her and held her again. I'm sorry you felt you had to go through this alone. Sobbing, Ka replied, I'm always acting like a tough girl, but really, I'm weaker than you. I'm just so scared for this child of mine because if she turns out to be anything like me, I would be ruining a life. Pakou pulled back and wiped her tears. You're not so bad yourself, honey. You're just a little unsure of things in life. There's no reason to hate yourself. Come on, cheer up and I'll buy you something you've been craving. God, don't talk to me about cravings. I've been eating so much that I had to buy 2 sizes larger in clothes. By the time I'm ready to deliver, I'll be huge. I still love you. And hey, you're going to be tiny enough still for my wedding. It was a hard week for Pakou. She was holding it together well until the announcement of their marriage blew up on the web, and everyone at the office began to point fingers at her newly position. A rumor was spread around that she slept her way to the top, and it left her feeling broken. The happy moment of ruining Justin forever disappeared, and she closed herself in her office. She began to read every single online post, and anyone who was anybody commented on the article of their wedding that she should be ashamed of herself. This wasn't going as she thought it was, and what she feared the most was now happening in real time. The door to her office opened and Graham walked in holding a dozen red roses, but his face paled when he saw her. He closed the door and walked over, handing them to her. She only stared at them, and then he turned her chair around, laying the roses in her lap. What's wrong, Dove? He asked gently. She turned her laptop toward him. This? Laughing, he hit a button and the page disappeared. Stop reading those. I can't. He fingered her cheek and smiled. Trust me. Stop. It's only going to get easier from here on out. Why? Because you're going to be Mrs. Graham-Wally. But don't worry about that. You're meeting my parents tonight, and after you meet them, you'll understand why I say it's going to be easy. My mother will teach you some skills on how to handle the press. She pushed the chair back and stood up, placing the roses on the desk. Why didn't you tell me that we were meeting with your parents? I'm not dressed right. He eyed her up and down. You look beautiful to me. I don't see what's wrong with what you're wearing. It's called first impression, Graham. Exactly, he said as he smiled. It means you'll be yourself, and that's what my parents love. Come on, pack up, let's go. The drive to his parents' house left Pakou feeling nervous, and she was again with sweating palms. She tried to breathe deeply and focus on what was in front of her, but failed miserably. They drove up to the large mansion with red brick, and she almost dropped her jaws open. She'd never been this close to a house this big before. As she parked the car, a butler dressed in a black and white number came out to greet them. "Master Graham, it's lovely to see you." And then he turned to her. "You must be Lady Pakou. I'm Stephen, the main butler of the Wally Mansion. I am pleased to meet you, Lady Pakou." "Thank you. They're waiting for you in the sunroom." "Thanks, Stephen." Graham came around and took her hand, leading her into the house where a grand double spiral staircase welcomed them. He led them through the all-white living room and into a place where his parents were dancing to a slow song on the record player. Pakou noticed that his father was looking at his mother with a deep gaze that held so much love. And his father was the same look of him, slightly older and a few inches shorter, but his mother was a beautiful, curvaceous woman with her hair done in a bun. The two were too involved with each other to even notice them. Graham cleared his throat. "You've drawn a crowd." At the sound of his voice, they both stopped, and then his mother let out a huge gasp and ran toward them. As Graham reached out to hug her, she slapped his hand away and took Pakou into her arms instead. "Oh, my girl! I've been waiting for you!" she cried as she pulled away and cupped her face. "You are more beautiful than words can describe." Tell me, is Graham being kind to you as I've always taught him to be?" Pakou felt loved so much that she felt tears enter her eyes, and suddenly his mother's face paled. "Oh, darling girl, what's wrong?" she asked. Shaking her head, Pakou replied, "Nothing is wrong. I don't have parents, so hearing you say that, it just moved me deeply." She smiled and hugged her again. "Oh, you poor thing. I'll be your mother from here on out." She pulled away and smiled. "I'm Ruth, and this is Graham's father, Nelson." He stepped forward and shook her hand. "My darling girl, whatever did you see in this boy to marry him?" "Wait, don't tell me." He touched his chin. "It was the good looks I gave him, right?" Laughing, Ruth said, "You mean what I gave him?" Everyone laughed, and Pakou let out a breath of relief. "Thank you for your warm welcome, Mr. and Mrs. Wally." She waved her hand. "Don't give me any of that, Mrs. Wally. You call me Ruth. Come on, how about we go set the dinner table together, and you can tell me all about yourself." Pakou turned, and Graham gave her a wink as she followed his mother to the kitchen. It held a grand center island and a large stove, which was a dream to cook in, and Pakou was amazed at the many ceramic pots and pans that hung from the ceiling. "Darling, do you have any food allergies?" Ruth asked as she opened the fridge and took out a few fruits. "No, I do not." "What can I help you with? You want to cut these up?" Mama Ruth, as Pakou called her, was a woman of many talents. She started her life from the ground up. She wasn't always around pleasant smells as she lived on a farm and shoveled hay and milked cows. She shared clothes, bathroom, and sleeping space with 9 other children. She was the youngest of 10, and although she may have been spoiled by her parents, she grew up humble. "Mama Ruth, I'm so in awe of you. It's like I can talk to you all day long and never get tired," Pakou said as the two of them brought out the trays of fruits to the dining room where Nelson and Graham were sitting talking together. "I'm glad. I need a woman to talk to after all these years." "What do you mean?" Nelson asked as he got up and wrapped his arms around her. "I'm here to listen to you every single day." She patted his arm. "You're not the same, dearest. You don't understand the differences when I talk about half sizes and shoes." Laughing, Nelson replied, "I rest my case. Come on, let's eat." "Your parents are lovely," Pakou said on the drive home. "I'm envious of you, growing up in such a lovely home." He turned to smile at her. "Thank you. They mean very much to me, and I'm glad you find them to be the same. I didn't have what you had growing up, so I was a little hesitant on joining a family when I haven't known you that long yet." Suddenly, Graham pulled the car to the side of the road and turned the engine off. Shocked, she asked, "What's going on?" He smiled as he unbuckled his seatbelt and reached over to grasp her chin in his hand. "Pakou, stop speaking so low of yourself like that. I don't like it. Whatever I have is now yours. That's the beauty of marriage. 2 people come together and share their lives as one. I know that you and I are strangers joining together a union, but I promise you that anything that is mine, now belongs to you too, including my parents." Her eyes filled with tears, and she let out a small breath of sob. "You know, when Justin left me, his wife screamed out at me that it was my fault my parents died. It was because they couldn't stand the disappointment in their daughter, so they decided that death was better. It gutted me alive and left me feeling down for many days. His wife is a fool, and I can't wait until I can give her a piece of my mind." She laughed, and he pulled her toward him. She thought it was for a hug, so she allowed it, and only until he leaned down closer to her did she realize his intention. But he held the back of her head, and she tasted the wine from earlier on him. It lasted a whole 2 minutes, the kiss, making her legs go numb, and her heart beat so fast she was frightened. When he finally pulled away from her, he smiled and ran his thumb over her lower lip. "I can't wait to make you officially mine," he whispered. "I promise you that on the day you become Mrs. Gramwally, it's the day your worries are over." "That's the baby?" Ka was asking as a tech showed her the ultrasound. Pakou was standing beside her as they both watched the screen of what looked like a little blob. "That's it. I'm measuring you to be about 9 weeks along. The baby looks healthy and is developing fine. How are you feeling?" he asked as he turned the machine off. "I feel much bigger than that." Laughing, he replied, "Well, being bloated is normal around the first trimester. If you have any concerns, please do state that to your doctor." After the ultrasound, the two of them walked to the nearby cafe for some sweets. Pakou was nervous, as she had only had about a week left before her wedding. Ruth and her had been planning everything around the clock and getting decorators to design last-minute themes and having everyone on the same page. "I'm sorry I haven't been exactly the perfect maid of honor for you," Ka said as she picked at her cupcake. "I've been so moody and damn bloated." Laughing, Pakou replied, "I'm giving you an easier time only because of that. I'm glad baby is doing well. Have you spoken to Roger?" Shaking her head, she replied, "No. What could I say to him? Hey, I'm pregnant and I'm not sure if the baby is yours? Come on, Pakou, he'd murder me." "Not likely. I think Roger really likes you, but he's a bit concerned about how you feel toward him." Ka waved her hand and made a face. "Whatever. Right now, I'm just bummed that I can't drink my sorrows away. The heaviest thing I can do is a cup of coffee once a day to drown my pain." Pakou smiled, and then her mood changed when she saw Justin's wife crossing the street with a bouquet of flowers in her hands. Ka noticed and followed her gaze and opened her mouth wide open. "Is that her?" Before Pakou could answer, the woman turned and their gazes met. Instantly, her eyes darkened and she started toward them. As she reached them, she let out a big laugh. "Wow, I didn't know low citizens of the city roamed around here," she said. "You mean yourself?" "I didn't either," Ka replied. The woman's face burned bright red, and she ignored her as she turned her attention to Pakou. "I heard about your little scheme in the workplace. You're such a low woman, really you are. Since you can't sleep with other people's husbands, you will sleep with the boss to gain entry to higher-ups. What kind of woman are you? Didn't your parents teach you any ethics growing up?" And then she laughed. "Oh, I guess you'd know if you had any, don't you?" Pakou's eyes burned with tears, and she stood up, pushing her chair back as the woman's face paled, forcing her to step backward. But that was only a fake reaction, as she swung back her hand with her purse to hit Pakou. The metal chain caught Pakou's hair and yanked her down to the concrete, skinning her cheek against the hard ground. Ka screamed out her name, and the woman dropped the purse and bouquet of flowers as Pakou pushed herself to a shaking stand. I didn't mean to do that," she said, trembling. "You stupid fool," Ka said as she shoved the woman off. "Oh, just you wait. You know who you're messing with here, don't you? This is Mrs. Gramwally you just assaulted. You can kiss your freedom goodbye." And just as she bent down to pick up her things, police cars came screeching in to block her. The woman raised her hand in surrender, and who should stroll down the street but Graham in jeans and a tight t-shirt. He took one look at Pakou, picked her up in his arms, and walked to the officers. "Arrest her for assault and battery," Graham said. "Wait! It was an accident!" the woman cried as the officers pushed her to the front of their cars and began to recite her Miranda rights. "You planned this, didn't you?" Pakou asked as Graham sat with her in the hospital room. The nurses had patched up her wound, and they were waiting to be discharged. He was watching her, and he felt the anger rise in his blood. Yes, he whispered low and deep in his voice. I couldn't wait for it, and I knew she would do something foolish. I just needed to catch her off guard. Graham's heart hurt looking at the bloody wound on her cheek. He had been watching from his car, and he didn't want her to have any wounds, but it had to be done in order for that woman to be arrested. I'm sorry, he said, but I would get the best doctor to make sure your wound is healed before the wedding. She lowered her head and shrugged. I'm still shaking from the incident. I didn't think she'd actually do anything to me. She destroyed your car, darling. I was just waiting for her to make the same mistake again in public. What will happen to her? Oh, she'll be sorry she ever touched you. He smiled and leaned forward to kiss her forehead. I'm going to go check on the doctor to see what's taking so long. I'll be right back. He walked out the door and met a terrified Justin running down the hallway. Graham wanted to punch the man, but he stuffed his hands in his pockets instead. Look, I'm sorry about what my wife did, but the charges you've pressed against her is outrageous. If convicted, she'll be doing 8 years in prison. Graham smiled and strolled toward him. What part of stay away from her did the two of you not understand? You both were warned to never be involved with her or touch her. In a very public place, your wife assaulted Pakou, and as her husband, I don't stand down when someone messes around with her. I was just trying to keep my wife away from Pakou. I was also trying to protect her too. Smiling, Graham replied, She was never yours to protect. Now get out of here, and if I see you again, I'll make sure you're carried out by a gurney. Justin laughed and strolled up to him. You think I'm afraid of you? You were just a second choice to her. She couldn't get over me for so long that even when the two of you are tightly conjoined together, she still thinks of me. Graham smiled and cleared his throat. I may be a second choice, but you were never even a first. I've covered every single part of her body and soul that the breath you breathe has no chance in even existing inside her. I'm not like you. I don't share any intimacy between her and me with others. I respect her, and while you speak to your wife through iron bars, I'll be holding mine every single night. Going home meant Graham's home, and Pakou was unsure of it, but she allowed it to happen. First, he took care of a woman who was out to get her, and second, he kept Justin away from her. The last time she was at his house, she didn't get a chance to look around, and now as she was wide awake and alert, she noticed that his house wasn't that far from hers. He had it styled in a contemporary manner with lighter colors, and although it was a lot bigger than hers, somehow he didn't overwhelm her. Thank you for what you did, she whispered as she settled down in the couch. I'm sorry you had to get in between us. He smiled and sat down next to her. Whatever is giving you problems, it's my job to make sure it's taken care of. Are you hungry? She nodded. Okay, wait here. I'll go cook you up a grand meal. Do you need help? He smiled and gave her a peck on the cheek. No, Mrs. Graham-Wally. You just relax and dinner will be served shortly. She relaxed against the couch and felt the exhaustion hit her. It hadn't been the greatest of day, but it had turned out to be better. Ka had worried over the blood that had spilled from her wound and was making a huge fuss, but after the doctor tended to it, it was some minor damage to her face. A few days' time and she would be as good as new. After dinner, she took a long shower and was gifted a new robe from him to wear. Frightened that he'd want intimacy, she stayed in the bathroom as long as she could, and when she finally came out, he came to hold her from behind immediately and gave her a kiss on the cheek. Were you afraid I'd do something to you? Is that why you were taking so long? He whispered as if he'd read her mind. No, she lied. Liar. I know you more than you think. Come on. I'll hold you to sleep, Pakou. The rest of the night will be you getting to know what it's like having me beside you, and nothing else. She turned around and faced him. Graham, thank you. Thank you for everything. Smiling, he pulled her close to him. You know, there's a proper way to say thank you to someone you truly are grateful for. She laughed and slapped him on the shoulder. Not yet. Mama Ruth did an amazing job with the wedding planning because on the day it arrived, the venue they'd rented looked something like from a magazine. Pakou was amazed and incredibly thankful for the woman. The makeup artist did a fantastic job of hiding her bruise on her cheek, and it barely showed. She was ready, all dressed up, waiting to become the official Mrs. Graham-Wally as she pulled the veil down. Ka entered the room and her face broke out into a huge smile. Oh my, Graham is gonna fall onto his ass with how you look. Thank you for being my maid of honor and for walking me down the aisle, too. I wouldn't have it any other way, honey. Shall we get you married? Yes, let's go. The two walked to the front of the double French doors and pushed it open as a wedding march song came on. Pakou smiled and felt tears enter her eyes as she watched Graham's eyes fill up with love. And out of the corner of her eyes, she saw something flash, and as she turned, saw Justin barging in the door with a gun in his hand. Her face paled as she screamed out Graham's name just as he fired the gun. The commotion from everyone blinded her as she pushed past the crowd into where Graham lay down on the altar. She heard Justin's voice behind her, and she covered Graham's body as another shot was fired, and she felt the pain escalate through her body as a colorful liquid of red decorated the front of her wedding gown. She gasped as another shot hit her again just below the shoulder. "Graham," she whispered as she took his hand together with hers. She saw his smile, and then she fell on top of him, blacking out. Thank you for tuning in. Chapter 5 will be out shortly.
I've done my best and my worst, learned my lessons. No matter how hard my life would treat me, I'd always get right back up, never worry. 'Cause I got a million reasons to keep holding on. Yeah, I got all that it takes to win and overcome. What I got is just a feeling, but it's oh so strong. It goes on and on, on and on. There's something going on inside of me. I feel it growing stronger every beat. I never just believe in what I see, 'cause I can feel the energy. Cause I can feel the energy. I've met my demons one too many times. They taught me lows are what makes you feel so high.